Hello folks, this is Chris, KY4CKP, and this week we're going to take a look in the HF Install in the Wife's Car project at how I mounted the radio and the components so they could fit easily in the vehicle, be removed from the vehicle, and wouldn't take up a lot of space or be visible in the vehicle. So that is what's coming up next on LCARA Ham Radio. Okay, folks, so what did I choose to mount the components of the radio, the power supply, and the duplexer for the HF install in my wife's car? Well, I thought about it for quite a while and considered a lot of different products and components and decided to go with some HDPE. This is a very tough, heat-resistant plastic, and it's used in a lot of different industries and things. And decided to use this, although wood prices are had been way up, could have used plywood. But, my wife said you can put a radio in the car, but you have to keep it neat. You have to keep it out of the way, largely invisible or non-distracting. And so to keep with that theme, I decided to spend money on this HDPE. It's not super cheap. Of course, I got a pretty big, thick piece of it. But I wanted something that was not going to crumble away over time, was not going to have to worry about it getting wet, or damp, or it has good UV protection and capabilities, and just something that would last for as long as I wanted to use it. So as you can see here, I bought this piece 1 inch by 12 inches by 27 inches. Not really inexpensive. Now it's actually gone up in price, at least $10 since I purchased my piece. And it's probably overkill. I could have probably gone with maybe the 3/4 inch, maybe the 1/2 inch, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't really going to have problems with sagging and bending and stuff. So I decided to go ahead and get the 1 inch. Now it's a pretty heavy piece of plastic, being that size. And then of course, once you put the components on there, but it's so far serving the purpose very well. I'm not going to have to worry about it. If I decide to take the radio out of the car and move it to a park bench and do some POTA or something with it, where I want to work outside the vehicle, if it's a nice day or something, it's not hard to do that. It only takes a couple of minutes to unhook a few things, and you can move it outside. So that's the choice I went with. You can see here it has some nice characteristics to it. Again, certainly there are cheaper choices out there, and some of those would be probably save you a little bit of weight as well. But again, I just wanted to be able to make one decision, and sort of follow that principle: pay once, cry once, and again, keep my wife happy and make sure it wasn't gonna cause problems in the vehicle or anything down the road. So again, this is really tough stuff. Again, it's used in a lot of different aspects, a lot of different industries. And the heat resistance, the UV resistance, again, this is marine grade. I felt it was going to be well suited to this task. So that's what I chose. Again, not terribly inexpensive. If you have something else laying around the house and you're going to do a similar project, certainly use whatever you'd like to use. Use some plywood, paint it up. Then you just have some paint smell for a while at least, which I kind of wanted to avoid as well because we were going on a 10-day road trip as I was working on this project, and I didn't want to have to smell paint for 10 days or anything. So it's high density polyethylene HDPE. You can go back and see where I got that off Amazon, and I'm sure there's other sources for that kind of material as well. Again, the 1 inch might have been overkill, but it is working very well, and I don't have to worry too much about flexing or bending or anything. So here we can kind of see, as I was getting started on this phase of the project, largely what I did is I laid out those components on the board. Here it's a little bit later in the project. I've actually got some of the screws in and things, but you can see the layout that I went with. So initially, of course, I laid everything out. I used, as you'll see in a moment, I used a silver Sharpie just for better contrast, and I just laid out everything about where I wanted it visually, and then just made some marks where all the screw holes were going to need to go. And even though I had quote unquote self-tapping screws, As a lot of you will know, if you do a lot of projects, even with the so-called self-tapping screws, it never hurts to drill a pilot hole, especially in this kind of material. This is very, very tough material. It's easy to work with, though. You can use saws on it and drills on it and things. It is easy to work with, but it's pretty tough. And I pretty much knew the self-tapping screws were not going to cut it. So it was no big deal to just find a drill bit of an appropriate size that matched the screw shaft and drill some pilot holes. And then it went together very easily. And again, it's a very tough material, so those screws have a good amount to material to bite into and to have a good grip on. And again, it's not going to really nasty away the same way wood and things might, especially plywood and things are likely to do, especially if they get damp. Here in central Kentucky, we have tons of humidity, and it probably wouldn't have taken all that long for a piece of wood to start to degrade because of that. So here we can see the layout. I marked all the hole positions, then just use drill bits to pre-drill some things. I used some right angle connectors and some short jumpers to go from the back of the radio to this duplexer. Now, if you remember, this is my FT991 Alpha, so it's HF, VHF, UHF capable. And so I used a duplexer to come off the antenna, the ATOS 120 Alpha antenna, Yaesu antenna, which the radio can tune directly. And I can bring in all of those different frequencies by having this duplexer. I can bring in the UHF, VHF, and the HF. So we have the cabling, the right angle connectors, the duplexer. Now the power supply, I didn't necessarily have to mount this power supply for this project. I actually got it with the radio because I got the radio used and hadn't used this power supply for anything because I had other power supplies for the shack. I mounted this for two reasons. The first was there is an AC outlet in the rear cargo compartment of my wife's 4Runner, and I was going to try to run the radio off of that, especially in the short time I had to get ready for the 10-day field trip we were taking to California. And then also, if I want to go and set out on a park bench or someplace and do POTA work and stuff, I got a power supply, and I can then hook it up to a portable power unit and use it that way, and still make sure I'm getting nice, clean, 13.8 volts and that kind of stuff. So I went ahead and decided to use the power supply for this project because I still have another one here in the shack, this sort of extra after I upgraded. So I'm not going to be short of power supply if a future project comes along. So here you can see I've marked the holes with a silver Sharpie. It gave me a really great contrast on the black HDPE. And again, just found a drill bit of an appropriate size to make a decent pilot hole. Now also you can see here, I knew I wanted to do a little bit of cable routing and so forth. And so I thought about that for a little while. And I remembered these kinds of clamps, these rubber lined clamps. So I just bought an assortment pack. I only needed 2 of these, but you know how it is. If you're going to buy some hardware, go ahead and buy some extra because there's a great chance you're going to need something similar to that for a future project, and it may save you a trip to Lowe's. Hopefully, the older I'm getting and the more trips to Lowe's I have made, the fewer trips I'll make in the future because you start to acquire various kinds of hardware and stuff for your collection. So I got these, and they work really well. I knew that I could put them in there, do some cable management, some cable routing, and prevent chafing and that kind of stuff because they are rubber lined. So you can see how I routed the power cable and the one main cable that goes out to the antenna there. Now this is sort of what I would call the top of the board. This is the radio, top side of the board. And you see I've got a couple of holes pre-drilled here. And the plan I had here was I have a couple of large black eye bolts, and I screwed them in here because to hold the radio up when the back seat is in the up position so people can sit back there, I've got a couple of heavy-duty rubber bungee cords that go around the headrest post and are going to hook into the eye bolts that go into these holes right here, and you'll see that in just a moment. And so that holds up the radio very nicely. They're heavy-duty rubber connections, and there's enough tension on there that there's not a lot of slop. And driving around and stuff, you're not going to have a problem with this thing just slinging around. So there's one of those heavy eye bolts goes all the way through, the HDPE. So what may be the final part of this series will kind of put everything together, and we'll kind of give you all a good look at how everything is set up in the vehicle and how it works. So this is Chris, KY4CKP for Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, 73.